Hello, hello. Welcome to Minds on Mushrooms, where we're unveiling the magic behind psychedelics for mental health and addiction. I am your host, Maggie Kirkwood. Today with me is Nick Musica, who is able to communicate with animals. And I'm just thrilled to have you today, Nick. This is exciting and can't wait to dive in and learn more. Where are you tuning in from?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Meg. I'm in San Diego.
Oh, wonderful.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's hear more about that. The stage is yours just to kind of explain what you do and as it relates to psychedelics.
Sure,
Um, yeah, let's get going.
sure, sure. Why don't we dive into the relationship with psychedelics, then I'll get into how this whole thing showed up for me.
That's
So
wonderful. Thank you.
so um so I was, we'll call it, reintroduced to psychedelics in 2017. And I say reintroduced because I was 20 once, and I played around with chemicals a little bit, and so little bit of LSD, a little bit of mescaline, a little bit of mushrooms,
Okay.
but nothing like one offs, no big deal. And then in 2017, I got a phone call from a buddy that he asked me if I was coming on Saturday, and I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, we had this conversation that if someone couldn't show up and I bought two tickets, essentially, that you would take the seat
Okay.
um, for a San Pedro ceremony. And,
Oh.
right, yeah, me too. And and I had no idea what it was,
Hmm.
and I heard psychedelic, and so I was semi comfortable with the with the chemical, but the context was very different, and so the more questions I asked him, the more it sort of didn't make any sense to me.
Hmm.
And some point in the conversation, I remember him saying, "Just come, you'll enjoy it." Okay.
Okay.
And this was after him saying, it starts at 9, it ends roughly at 9, and it's all day. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, "Ah, okay, well, but you'll like it. Okay, all right."
Yeah.
And and then I started to do a little bit of research. Immediately getting off the phone with him. What is this San Pedro? What is this San Pedro cactus? And trying to understand what it is and what I'm getting myself into. And certainly psychedelic came up a lot, but then the word ceremony and talk to God, those types of phrases started to show up, and I thought, I don't know if this is for me. I'm not sure what's going on here. And so I went, and when I get there, I started to just ask people why they were there because I'm trying to figure out why I'm here.
Yeah.
And I remember one woman saying, I heard that there's a chance to talk to God, and so here I am. Oh, okay, right. So now the things I read online were starting to show up because either people felt that way, or that's what they read similar things online, or they were told that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, my first time is 2017, and my regular rhythm is every 6 to 12 months. Is I sit with the cactus.
Okay.
I find it extremely therapeutic.
Well, yeah, just crazy. We were talking beforehand just briefly,
Mm.
but yes, I recently sat with Wachuma or San Pedro for my second time. And such a lovely, lovely, beautiful, uplifting experience for me. Both times. Yes, was your San Pedro experience something that leads into animal communication?
Yeah, yeah, I would describe it as, there's 2 pieces, like the San Pedro, um, man, like, day 1, you see what's possible. Like,
Mm,
like, there's no holding back. It shows you what you need to see, like, right now, and there's a guide there as you're doing it. There's a human guide saying, here's what's going to happen. Here's the background of the plant. Here's how it's used in ceremony. But when you're in the space, at least this has been my experience.
mhm.
There's something, maybe the young lady I talked to, maybe this was her phrase, talk to God. Maybe that's what's happening. But there's some type of guide or spirit or something that holds your hand as you're going through this experience. Um, which I have not found with, I know, like, mushrooms are the cool kid, that's the conversation quite a bit, but I just haven't found that to be the experience with mushrooms for myself personally. So
Gotcha.
so I like San Pedro quite a bit. And so what it I would say that San Pedro opened my eyes to what is possible in terms of consciousness and connection, uh,
Mm,
but it didn't help me necessarily, uh, communicate with the animals. I would say it did in some parts, but what really made the difference for me was meditation,
okay.
which in my brain is all the same thing, right? Meditation, the medicine is it's all the same thing. It's this channel that we're creating and we're connecting through it. Um, but one is fast tracking you and it's an experience and it opens things up and then, there's a crack that remains and then you sort of delve into it. That's the plant ceremony. Again, my experience. Where
Okay.
the meditation is a little more intentional. You need to step into it. You need to do it. You need to show that you're showing up. And
Mhm,
once you do that, you start to develop this relationship. And it's similar to, keeping in touch with a friend. You call at a certain time. We're going to talk once a week. If you didn't make the phone call, then what happened? Right, the connection starts to get a little fuzzy.
mhm.
So you need to show up at a specific time. You're cultivating this experience with the meditation,
Absolutely.
right?
Um, yeah, I'm just shaking my head a little because I think it's funny how the plant medicines work because it is not just a coincidence. I'm sitting here speaking shortly after my San Pedro ceremony, and very similar thoughts running through my head about my practice with meditation, and I'm new to it. So
Hmm,
this idea that when I can get there in my meditation practice, it does feel as though I am talking to someone, something, there's some
sure,
conversation. It wasn't always like that. I didn't really know what I was looking for when I was meditating.
sure.
And then through San Pedro, it was amplified
Yes.
when I was inward and meditating. And all right, so carry on. I just wanted to
Yeah.
throw that in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I mean, and that speaks a lot to how I feel and think about it in my experience with it for sure. And so every time doing the San Pedro, so like meditation got easier, right? But it was all but nothing would have happened if meditation wasn't a thing. I would be having these wonderful experiences. Hopefully I would bring them back and incorporate them into my life and I think the plant helps you live life the right way. And so I think if you were to only do the San Pedro, great, but you're missing out on a core piece of it. And when people say integration, I don't know. I'm not tracking that conversation all that much, but I'm tracking that there's a need for the integration, and that's sort of missing in some parts with the psychedelic
Mm,
conversation, right? And for me, the integration was that meditation, and I wouldn't have described it at the time, but
mhm.
having done these things for a few years at this point, I completely think that a good deal of the plant medicine integration is that meditation, that daily
So,
practice.
are you speaking, integration specifically to San Pedro or psychedelics in general?
I can only speak to San Pedro.
Oh, I gotcha.
I would imagine it pertains to a lot of the other ones as well, but my experience is, 99% San Pedro.
Yeah, with my experience, I agree with you when it comes to San Pedro because it is, for example, my experience, there was a group of us, so you were either socializing or you were going inward.
Yeah,
Since it was my second go, had remembered how powerful and unbelievable the meditation period of my first time around was. I made sure to go inward and meditate as much as possible. But I kind of, yeah, it seems like Wachuma or San Pedro for me is more real time. um, and when psilocybin for me, uh, not the same. I think that I can have, a very profound, deep trip, and in days time, a few days or who knows, some amount of time later, I'm still kind of getting, questions or feelings about maybe I need to look into that more, or talk more about that. But I'm just, yeah, even with microdosing, I feel that sometimes on my off days or when I'm taking breaks are when the mushroom messages are kind of coming through for me. So it's
yeah.
interesting to hear
Oh,
your
yeah.
perspective. But I would agree the integration process is probably lighter, and less with San Pedro.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and I think there's some folks who may need a group of people to help them with the integration, and so that may be integration helping to contextualize what happened over their time.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, that just wasn't necessarily for me, and I know that I had conversations with folks, but I would lean more into the meditation because it was opening up something that I didn't fully understand at the time, and the more that I was in the energy of the meditation or the San Pedro, the more that you can go back and visit it and exist in it, and then you bring it back to both those things, bring it back to your daily activities,
Mhm.
and then see how it expresses. So, sort of a little bit of a time on task type of mentality. The more you're in
Right.
it, the more you're doing it.
Yes. Um, okay, so let's from there, how was it that you started recognizing some of these gifts that you have?
Yeah. So 2017 is when I got reintroduced to psychedelics, and around the same time, I got properly introduced to meditation. And coming out of the San Pedro ceremony, for whatever reason, I wanted to go figure out what was happening for about 25, 25, 30 years. I keep messing up the math. Um, Maybe I'm in denial of the math a little bit, but I had these dreams that would show up, and I only learned within the past year that they're called clairvoyant dreams. So if you could
Okay.
imagine having a dream about a random dog on a random corner in a random city, and then a day, a week, or a month, or a year later, you drive by that dog in that on that corner in that city, right? It could be anything, but it's
Wow.
just this thing that I was dreaming of, and then it would show up, right? And it felt the closest thing I could articulate at the time was time travel. I'm like, that sounds ridiculous. I can't even say that to anyone, right? It just doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
And then 2017, I thought I want to figure out what this thing is. And I asked a few folks, and no, it's not lucid dreams, and no, it's not deja vu. Like it just doesn't fit. And the more they would talk about it, the more I'm going, that's a hard no. It just doesn't map.
Mm.
And then I met someone who was a psychic, is a psychic, and he said, "Well, what's going on? Why are you here?" And I walked him through the dreams, and his response was, "Well, I think there's something tapping you on the shoulder."
Okay.
Which was a very unsatisfying answer, right? Like, I wanted the color red, and I wanted number 2. I wanted an absolute answer. Give me something that is I can just, circle it and put it in the notebook and walk away from.
Right.
Uh, and this was the opposite of that. It was a wonderful answer, but it was also frustrating. It was more of opening the door than it was, closing the book on it. And so that led into meditation. And through the meditation practice, started to see things, hear things, and feel things, the energy would start to show up, which was a totally new experience for me. And and that was slowly happening over a period of time. And then I guess it was about 2 years ago, a year and a half or so ago, my wife and I go to the psychic fair in Carlsbad where we live.
Okay.
And we're walking around the psychic fair and don't see anyone. We approach the floor from the opposite direction. Right in front of us, there's the sign that says psychic medium, medium Adelita. And I said, "Hey, Jewel, what do you think of her?" And my wife said, "That sounds great. Why don't you go first?" So I sat down, and I have to say, psychic mediums just weren't my thing. I was skeptical, to say
Yeah.
the least. Right? Psychics, yes, but mediums just wasn't part of my bag.
Gotcha.
And so I sat down, sort of almost like I'll do this so that my wife can do this. I think it'll be good for her.
Okay.
And then within like 30 seconds, she starts by drawing this heart. Adelita starts by drawing a heart, and she says it's either a former romantic relationship or it's an animal. And it turns out to be an animal. The message is you did too much. And so now I'm reflecting on the past 2 years of being on the planet with Henry, who is my white cat who lived to be 22. And the last
Okay.
2 years of his life, we're going back and forth to the vet, checking the
Mm.
food, hydrating him, blood work, all the things to treat the symptoms of old age for a cat. We
Right.
weren't going to solve any problems, but we were treating the symptoms. So the summary of "you did too much" was spot on.
Mhm.
And as I'm dialoguing with myself around, yeah, like, you were skeptical of a medium, and now this is happening, right? I'm like sort of catching up in the conversation. She says they are now, she's referring to her guides, they are now showing me Dr. Doolittle. They're showing me that you can talk to animals and it's going to be easy for you.
Oh.
Right. And so I thought, man, I've never heard anything more truthful in my life. And I couldn't tell you why. It just landed very truthful for me.
Oh, okay.
And at the end of 15 minutes with her, she said, "Well, how did all this land?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah." So I go home and I do the meditation that I've been doing for a few years.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, I'll just try to tune into my cat, Chucky, my living cat. And suddenly I see this big bright light. It would be the type of light that, if you read spiritual books, you would associate with like a higher level being, a spirit guide or an angel or something like that.
Mhm.
And I thought, there's absolutely no way this is my cat. He shits in a box. Sometimes he shits on the floor. Like he's not a higher level being. He's just not.
Okay.
So I call her up and I say, this isn't working. Never mind being easy. It's just not working.
Mhm.
And her response was, "Well, you're expecting information to come in a very specific way, and that's not how this works. Just be the channel, let the information come through, and you're gonna get what you need to get." All right, sounds simple enough. And at the same time, I bought animal communication books, and I bought a couple sessions with animal communicators to see, like, how does this whole thing work? Like, can I learn anything from it?
Yeah.
And as I was getting it from my dining room table to go to Zoom for a conversation just like this with one of those animal communicators, I get this quick flash of Return of the Jedi. I see the ghost of Obi-Wan and the ghost of Yoda,
Mm.
and I realize I'm being shown this student-teacher relationship.
Oh, okay.
And I realize I'm not the teacher here, I'm the student, and this is
Mm.
coming from Chucky.
Okay.
And then I'm reflecting on that white light, which I easily dismissed. And now I'm thinking, "Oh, that was his introduction to me." Now I'm a slow student. I'm getting it. I'm starting to get it. And then I get on the line with the animal communication or communicator, and we talk about what I just saw and who he is to me and all those things. So the animals were showing up for me for, I don't know, about 6 months or so. Uh,
Okay.
just having random experiences. The dog at Home Depot, the dolphin in Mexico, horses that I used to work with. Like it was just showing up consistently. Then I thought, I wonder if I can do this for anyone else. S
Oh, okay.
So I went on to Nextdoor. I don't know if you're familiar
Yep.
with it. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
Facebook, but it's not family and friends. It's people
Yeah.
in your neighborhood, right?
Neighborhood app. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And, I went on and I said, "Hi, my name is Nick Musica. I'm an animal communicator. That means I psychically talk to animals. Click here for free 15 minutes."
Okay.
And, so now I talk to I talk to, I talk to animals every week. I talk to
Wow.
people's pets every week. Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. It's a hoot.
So, yeah, can we talk about your process a little bit? How that works?
Sure.
We were discussing, I hope to have a reading someday when the books are open. And yeah, how do we go about, or how do you go about speaking, or hopefully speaking
Yeah.
with,
It's
especially my pet has passed.
yeah,
Yeah, but just love to hear
yeah.
you.
Yeah, so my process is I ask folks to, like, book a time on Calendly, fill out a form, which includes basic information, their first name, their last name, contact information, the name of the pet, the age of the pet, the breed of the pet, and submit some pictures.
Okay.
And, that information is helpful, and what really seals the deal for the communication is the person who's submitting the information, their intention. If you want me to connect, I can connect. If you are more interested, and this has shown up, if you're more interested in how does this whole thing work,
Oh, okay.
uh, like I'm curious how it showed up for you, and I want to have that conversation. But I'm filling out this form because that's the way to, I think it is to contact you. It doesn't work. That happened a couple times at the beginning, at the second time, I tease it out. Oh, this is what's happening because the conversation is quickly turns into, so how did it show up for you versus what did my pet say? Those are
Oh,
two different conversations.
yeah.
Right. And so the intention is super helpful. Um, like I said, without it doesn't work. And so I will end up talking to the animal, let's say on a Wednesday. I take notes and then I get the human on the line and then I debrief with the human about what the animal said. I'll invite the animal into the conversation. They typically always show up, whether they give more information or not is something else.
Okay.
But it's a two-part process. You talk to the animal on day one, then day two, talk to the human and work through the information, and have questions and process what was said.
Got you. That's so exciting. Um, and do you have any, I don't know, profound or kind of extra special readings, or maybe some reviews or a feedback from somebody, but anything?
I
that
mean,
you can
I
share?
yeah, I mean, I have a few testimonials on the website, but, I'd say, I mean, typically what's been showing up is here here's sort of the normal rhythm, is I'll talk to the animal, get information about the animal and from the animal's perspective about whatever. It could be about a bunch of different things. It could be about their day-to-day activities with the human. It could be specifically about the human. And then at some point, very quickly, we get into here's what it looks like for the human, information about the human, right? So the animal is sort of like the opening to almost like we'll call it like San Pedro or ayahuasca. It's like the opening to the information.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So the animal is certainly giving information, and then maybe the channel broadens up a little bit, and more information from a different source will come through.
Okay.
But the animal's always there, and it's all here's the tricky thing. Like it's typically all in the context of the person. So here I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
So a young lady showed up and she said, "I want to talk about my dog who's biting people."
Okay.
Okay. And in the form, I asked people for 3 questions. So she said, "Can you please tell the dog to stop biting people?" Well, and it sort of doesn't work that way, but, I'll certainly ask, and we'll see what response is. So I tune into this little chihuahua, and I found the chihuahua, and, the first thing out of the chihuahua's mouth, if that's a thing, was ask her about her job. And my
Okay.
response was, "Well, why am I asking her about her job?" Keeping in mind, she wanted me to talk to this chihuahua about biting people.
Right.
And the chihuahua's response to my question was, "Well, because the job is what has to change."
Mm.
Okay. All right. So I get on the line with the human and she says, "Did you have a chance to talk to my dog?" I did. "Did you tell him to stop biting people?" I didn't. "Well, what'd you talk about?" What do you do for a living?" "Well, I'm out of work right now." No, you're not.
Mm.
So what are you doing?" "Well, I'm a private driver." What does that mean?" "Limousines, Uber, that type of thing." "Okay. How's that working out?" "Well, I have spinal issues. So after an hour or 2 sitting in the car driving around, my back is very irritated. I'm all banged up. My
Mhm.
doctor says I shouldn't be doing this job."
Mhm.
"Oh, okay. Well, here's what your dog said." And we got into her job and what that meant. Um, and And so what happened in this case and what frequently happens with a lot of folks is they'll come to me with like a 3D problem. My dog is
Mm.
doing a thing, my cat is doing the thing. And sometimes there's something to it, right? Like my dog is biting people. Why? Because it's reacting. Well, here's how we can work with that reaction,
Yeah.
possibly. But typically it's about a reflection of the human. So
Okay.
this individual was not happy with their job. They're angry about their job situation.
Mhm.
Right, that was clear as soon as we got on the line. It was someone who was not necessarily happy.
Mhm.
Uh, and part of the conversation was, "Well, my dog's been biting people for 8 years." And we didn't have the time to go into it because of the duration of the reading, but the conversation would have gone down the path of, "Well, let's talk about the past 8 years of your job, and let's
Mm, right.
understand most
Mm.
likely why each and every one was not a fit, and why you're just getting more and more unsatisfied
Mhm.
with your life because of these things."
Mhm.
And that led to being angry, and your dog is just showing you that you're angry.
Gotcha. Um, do you know if this reading, I mean, provided change or transformation from the owner?
You know, I don't have a community where people come in and give and, sort of
Yeah.
close that circle. Yeah,
I hear
yeah.
you. Um, I had a question just kind of backing way up here. So,
Sure.
part of some of your, I guess, symptoms of, you said you were having dreams
Yeah,
or clairvoyant dreams,
right.
where a pet would be there and sometime later in real life this pet would what is your perspective with how do you handle your dreams essentially? Do you kind of like when you're dreaming, do you take them very seriously? And I would just like to have conversation, or only is this only when pets are involved that that it's
Yeah,
like
no, I was just using random dog on random corner
yeah.
as a random example.
Okay.
But I mean, it's, the dreams get so, like, the first one that I had, I was in undergrad school, and I had a dream that this this kid that I went to high school and grammar school with was at the same college that I was at,
Okay.
which he wasn't. He was at a different school, and I knew that. So I was just like, "That's a weird dream. Why would I have a dream that I saw this person at my school? Like, it just doesn't
Mhm.
make any sense." And we didn't keep in contact. But there was one day, maybe 6 months later, where I'm sitting in the same spot that I had this dream of. There's fire doors on the right, there's fire doors on the left, there's a big window in front of me. I'm in this hallway just outside of
Mhm.
the classrooms. And in my dream, um, this gentleman came walking from the left-hand side and then went to the right. That was where from my left to my right.
Okay.
But in reality, he came from the right to the left in real life,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I said, What are you doing here? You don't go to school here. I don't get it." And he
Yeah.
said, I transferred here this semester. Yeah, I don't go to that other school anymore." Oh. Oh, okay.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, that's how the first one showed up. And the other ones sort of show up very similar. It's almost like watching a rerun of a TV show, right?
Uh-huh.
When I'm living it out in real life, it feels very familiar, and you're like, I'm pretty sure I know what's coming up next.
Yeah.
And then something very familiar comes up where you're like, it's gonna be this, and then it's exactly that.
Wow. Um, yeah, I just wanted to getting back to psychedelics. So sounds like with San Pedro or Wachuma, you're thankful, or that was giving you kind of the opportunity to get to where you needed to be, or to understand that you had this capability or gift, right?
Yeah.
Um, do you have any, or other than San Pedro, do you have experience with other psychedelics? And I guess I'd
Yeah.
want to hear your thoughts on, yeah, just how you feel about plant medicine in general.
I've never spent time with ayahuasca. I would like to. I just haven't.
Mhm,
Never had the opportunity, or maybe it never called to me as much as San Pedro. I mean, I have a really good relationship with San Pedro.
mhm.
Almost to the point when I show up for the ceremony, things are already moving. Things are already
Yes.
in the wild, right? The trees are already doing things, the
Oh, I
bushes are.
see.
Mhm.
Visually, yeah.
Oh, yeah, 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 like, you could feel that it's already active even though you're
Right.
you haven't ingested any of the medicine. It's somehow at play, right?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, again, no ayahuasca. Mushrooms a little bit. I don't really understand them.
Okay.
I don't have so my expectations are sort of like it's gonna be like San Pedro,
Yeah.
and then it's not. And San Pedro is such in a container, and it's just, like, so easy to communicate,
Yeah.
and the information is so clear. Um, and with mushrooms, the best example I have was, I can feel them kicking in, everything is, you know, feels like it's coming online, and
Mhm.
my eyes are closed, and it's just like all these random pieces of things are just moving.
Yeah.
Uh, and I couldn't there's no other way to describe it, just like random things. Um, and I asked, "So is that what we do? We just just a bunch of things are moving around right now? Is that what's happening?" And then everything stopped. And
Okay.
and I was like, "Oh, so that's the connection. All right.
Oh.
So that there's a dialogue going on here. All right."
Mhm.
But that was I didn't really know how to interact with it. Maybe it was a little too little. Maybe I was getting in the way. I really don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I, in my experience, when we're talking about, I guess, the meditation going inward piece while having San Pedro, Wachuma has happened during a psilocybin trip, but it would have been on a large healing journey toward the latter part of the journey when I've worked through a lot of things. um, it's part of that roller coaster. Like for me, at least, you got to kind of dig deep, 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 and then you come out feeling held and loved and supported, which
Yeah.
is how I feel when I'm having San Pedro. Um, so you got to kind of get, I guess, kind of die before you're in heaven, or I
Y
don't know, but
yes,
it
yes, sir.
feels
Yeah,
that way.
sometimes you have to earn it. I mean, even with San Pedro, just drinking it is earning it. I mean, that it
Oh,
doesn't taste great. Oh my god, right?
it's
And
so
there's
bitter.
this oh, And there's like this 45-minute, an hour waiting period of like, you better not let it up, even though your body may reject it,
Mhm.
or else you're gonna do it again, right? Just, your body didn't have a chance to absorb it. So you're just like waiting, just counting the minutes of just like, "Oh my god, am I past the time?" And then, I mean, I've had a lot of very gentle experiences with it, and only the past couple years has it come online, and I had a fair amount of purging, which is,
Oh,
uh
wow.
yeah, so, for anyone who's not done plant medicine, we never say puking, we never say, vomiting, it's always purging, right? So
Purging. Yes,
it
'cause you
it
are.
looks it looks like a whole lot like vomiting, but the idea is
Right.
that it's energetic and spiritual purging, and, until you do it, at least for me, I was like, looks like everyone's throwing up, right?" But then you do it, and you hear things and you feel things as you're doing it,
Mhm.
and, it's awful at the time, like, there's nothing enjoyable about it at the time, but, afterwards, you feel like a champ. It feels
Right.
great. Yeah.
I appreciate that because, again, I think, plant medicine takes balls. I mean, because you never know what to expect. They say it's kind of like having a baby. And the more you research, the more you ask your doctor questions, no trip is the same. And
Mm-mm.
so, yes, I wanted to ask, though, a couple questions about
Yeah.
your ceremony with San Pedro. Have you, well, first of all, I was curious, do you do a multiple day ceremony?
Mm,
Um, or is it mainly just one?
I have not. I've only done, day ceremonies.
Okay. Um, I was just curious at my last retreat because I know they do ayahuasca multiple days in a row. I was wondering if you were to consume San Pedro, would there be any effect that second day? But we don't know.
I don't
uh,
know. Yeah, one day is a lot for me, so
yeah, it's a long day.
yeah, it's a long
Mm,
day. Yeah.
yeah. And my next question, I learned with my first experience, just kind of working with cannabis brought on a whole nother level, visually for me. And I felt just again more elevated or, yeah, just a stronger sensation of the medicine. Have you experimented with cannabis at all whilst having the San Pedro?
I have not.
Okay.
Um, I haven't. Sorry, I'm gonna get this camera. That's better. It's bugging
Oh.
me, just bothering me. I haven't combined them. Um, I haven't combined anything. It's
That's
only
probably for the best, but
s
I
yeah, 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 yeah. So
yeah.
what was your experience?
So I, you know, kind of vulnerable here, but I am someone who likes to make sure I'm having enough. And that's kind of my worry sometimes. A lot of people people are wondering, have I had too much? Oh no, but Maggie's a little bit different. I just want to be sure that I'm where I need to be. And I feel like I have just a higher tolerance in general with anything. So during my first go with San Pedro, we were just, a couple of the facilitators had mentioned um, with cannabis or having some flower can deepen your experience. And it sure did
Mm,
for me.
mm,
Um, Meaning it took that for me to realize the meditation piece, going inward, connecting, and that's what really kicked off my at-home meditation practice because 'cause
oh,
I'm like, "I
interesting.
need to get there." So, anyway, for me, I guess, San Pedro really helped develop my meditation practice, but just yeah, on a side note, the cannabis, um, yeah, just added kind of another, uh an intense kind of, I don't know, booster of sorts.
Yeah,
And the visuals uh, with my eyes closed were more. Um, and that's the best way I can describe it, just like a little booster. But anyway, I was just curious because I thought I'd ask since you're
yeah. I
experienced
I
with
know a friend of mine, sometimes will smoke after San Pedro, and he says it uh, sort of brings it back a little bit.
mhm,
But I just never had the interest in doing that.
gotcha. Well, something to keep in your back pocket, Nick.
I could try it. We'll see how it goes.
Um, well, let's see here. Do you have like a website or anywhere that you'd wanna direct the viewers
I
to check
sure
out your
do, yeah.
services?
Thanks for asking. Yeah, I have a
Mhm.
website, it's called mycatschooledme.com
Alright.
because he did.
Mhm.
Um, and so on there you can book a animal reading if you'd like. And I also work with folks to better communicate with their animals,
Oh,
um,
wow.
teach them a little bit, some basic things like what you can do in the 3D. Like there's a couple things you can do immediately. And
Mhm.
then there's a little bit more if you were to take the things that I teach people, it goes more 3D to more intuitive, right?
Okay.
So the 3D is rather easy. The intuitive is a little more effort, more practice based is a good way to phrase it.
Mhm.
But everyone can do this. Everyone can do this in some form or another. You can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So mycatschooled.me.com.
mycatschooledme.com. I have a bear Instagram page, no pun intended. Bear Instagram page, my cat schooled me on Instagram. If that's your bag, feel free to follow there. There'll be more information up there, more content up there, but right now it's just sort of getting started.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, it was such a pleasure having you and learning about your talents. And I'm excited to hopefully have a reading here with you one of these days
Let's
soon.
do it. Yeah, we'll get it
And then
scheduled.
happy to report to the listeners how it went. I really appreciate you and your time, Nick. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I'm good, Maggie. I think we covered a lot.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for tuning in, guys. Thank you for joining the journey. You can tune in to Minds on Mushrooms on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.